family. Today we're going to be talking about what the automotive market is going to look like
Let's
under
check this
Trump.
out.
Now, whether you're left or you're right, that's okay. Difference of opinions. At the end of the day, we're all
hmm
Americans, and it's Veterans Day. So let's be more patriotic than political, and let's get into the video. So I've been gone for a
Fair
little
enough.
bit because I was busy with SEMA. If you guys didn't know, I built a two-door,
That's
two
sick as
JZ
hell.
swap Tesla Model 3. It was a
That's
big
cool.
hit at SEMA. Had tons of interviews. It was a great thing. I think we got over 10 million views across multiple platforms. If you haven't seen those
hmm
build videos, definitely go back and check them out. I pretty much want to do everything in the automotive industry, whether it's talking about business, finance, dealership licensing, or actually building a
Cool.
car. We want to do it all. Those videos don't get as much love, so if you guys can go back and check it out, I truly appreciate it. So let's go ahead and talk about all the things I've seen change in the automotive industry since Trump was
hmm
elected. Now, typically when there's a changing of guard, whether it's Republican to Democrat, Democrat to Republican, banks tend to basically pull their purse strings, stop lending, and wait to see what happens and let the dust settle. Now, typically when it's a
Right.
Republican candidate,
Makes
banks tend
sense.
to feel more freely when it comes to lending. They figure that that particular party is more pro-business, and so they tend to lend a little bit more. But the exact opposite happened when Trump was first elected. I guess they didn't realize or feel like if he knew what he was doing, so they were a little bit skittish. But
Right.
now in his second term, it's a complete 180.
It's because people
Banks
didn't
have
know
basically
Trump back
rolled out the
then.
red carpet. I've
hmm
talked to numerous bankers in different states with different types of lending programs, and they're all saying the exact same thing, that they're going to go back to lending like they were in 2019. Now, this is a good thing
That's
and a
good.
bad thing.
Yeah.
Some of the banks talked about lowering interest, some talked about bringing back 84-month financing, and
No.
these are some of the things I know we need because new cars are so expensive and people can't afford them. But at the end of the day, changing the financing really won't help Americans purchase cars because,
hmm
obviously inflation is ridiculous. Car
The
insurance has
big
doubled, if not.
the big problem with that is it's mainly people that it's businesses are reacting to what consumers want, and what consumers want is reliable cars, the latest and greatest tech, and it to be somewhat spiffy and pick up and go. But I think people just don't understand the amount of cost that goes into doing that. Cars nowadays are mainly computers on wheels. You have sensors for everything. There's sensors for your crankshaft. There's sensors for your air intake. There's sensors for your AC. There's sensors for your brake pedal. There's sensors for your gas pedal. There's sensors for your exhaust gases. Like, there is a lot of sensors that go into cars, and those cost money. Like, it costs money to make these cars, and especially if you want Android and Apple Play and all of that stuff, that all costs money, and they have to get the microchips, they have to get all the parts to make that. And at the end of the day, cars are it really just depends on what you're looking for, because I don't know if you guys look at this Lucky's channel. Pretty good YouTuber. I really like what he has to say. It's pretty spot on if you want to get a good deal on a car. But I mean, it's nice that they're gonna lend stuff pre 2019. So what that would mean is interest rates are gonna be lower if you're like a prime borrower, prime, right? Higher if your credit sucks, but um, you should be able to get like a car for like your average used car with 60,000 miles on it for 10, 12 grand. What needs to happen is a price shift. I think a lot of dealers, this is just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think a lot of dealers got pretty happy when the pandemic hit and there was a huge supply chain, and they had to mark everything up because there was no supply to meet the demand for the cars. And people couldn't afford, people couldn't buy new cars because they weren't making them, because they couldn't, because there was no supplies, right? There was a supply issue. And so what happened is those new car buyers flooded to the used car market because everything in the new car skyrocketed. So they flooded the used car, and now there's more demand in the used car market. And law of economics, if you have a large supply and a high demand, or a low supply and a high demand, prices go up. And that's exactly what happened. You saw it. So supply was low for used cars because you had all these new buyers going into the used car. So it made the demand go insanely high, and they didn't have enough supply to meet that demand. So used car prices skyrocketed. And then a lot of people got bought out of just being able to afford a car. And the thing is, you can't buy like some old car that's made in 2004 and fix it up to pristine condition because no one wants that old tech. They want the newest stuff. So really, if you want prices to change, you need a change in a mentality shift. But how are you going to do that, you know?
Tripled in your area. The price of cars have gone up 35%. So a
You
lot of
would
things
need a
need to change.
majority of
Now, it's
people
great that
to
lending is coming back because we really
basically have a
talked about the
mind
credit
shift
crunch
that
affecting
it's
most Americans.
not needy.
Now,
You don't
I'm
need
one
a
of these
new
people that
car or
believe that once
used.
you take credit away from Americans, watch how fast our economy slows down.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, it's been
Because
happening
people
little
can't
by
afford
little. You've
anything.
heard businesses get their lines of credit cut. You've
Mm-hmm.
heard other people like their credit cards have been shut off or closed or something else. Even my Discover card, I haven't used it in a year, but they actually closed my Discover card because I was not using it.
Yeah, but you
So
also
I
have
think
people
they're
that are
doing as much as
buying
they can
cars
to
that are just
prepare for the fall
10
because
times
they
their
know that
income.
there's going to be a
Because you have
recession.
people
They
making
just don't
stupid
know how bad
purchase
it's going to be.
decisions.
Now that there is a Republican candidate that's in office, I think banks are breathing a little bit easier knowing that there's somebody in there that's basically
Maybe, I don't
pro
know.
business. Now, I talked about it for quite some time that I had a bad feeling that the government was going to go after a lot of automotive banks because
Mm-hmm.
they were doing predatory lending or something else. But that wasn't really the fact. The fact was is that most Americans have this victim mentality where, oh, I was taken advantage of. They sold me a car that was worth double or triple, and now I have to pay for it. I shouldn't have to. You should give me some sort of forbearance or forgiveness. And that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what I didn't want to happen. I didn't want to make
Okay, story time. So I want to tell you this. So I had back in 2020, 2019, 2020, right? I had a 2015 Kia Forte SX hatchback. Loved that car. It was fully loaded, had a turbo. It went from like 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds. It was a fun little hatchback. Great little car. I had a dealer call me on the phone and say, hey, we know you have a 2020 Kia. Did you want to look into trading it in? Because I had the loan for about 2, 3 years. I had it on a 4-year loan at like, I think it was like 4 or 5% interest, and I only owed maybe like 6 or 7 grand on the car. It was almost paid off. And I personally was like, well, I'm not really interested, but if you can give me a good deal, I'm willing to hear you out, right? I think anyone would take that opportunity, like, hey, if you can give me a good deal, like, I might consider trading in my car. So I went to the dealership and told them what I was looking for. Well, I would like a manual. I like manual cars. They're fun to drive. I would like something a little peppy. So he's like, how about this Camaro? And it's an orange Camaro with pinstripes, and it's a 2010. It has about 60,000 miles on it. Bumper is damaged. The key fob is completely destroyed. There's no buttons on it. I'm like, bro, this key fob's destroyed. The bumper is scraped. So yeah, the bumper was all ruined and scraped. I could have done it myself, but not making a good case if you're trying to get someone to buy your product, right? So I was like, okay, well, this key fob's damaged. Bumper's all messed up. I mean, I don't really care for orange, so that was. And my car, mind you, had pleather seats. It was fully loaded. It had like a nav system. I never used it, but it was, it came with the car. Might as well just had a nav system, AM, FM radio, it had satellite radio, it had heated and cooled seats. All the seats in the car, including the rear passenger seats, were heated seats. Like this was a really nice car. Moonroof, and this was back when I guess Kia was doing pretty good because I never had any issues with that car. It never gave me any problems. I just kept changing the oil, getting new tires, putting brakes on it, and I never had any problems with it. And the guy is like, well, you could, you work on cars, you could fix that. Oh, well, we'll fix the key fob. And also, there's a crack in the front windshield, like a nice big chip, right? So I go, look, you're not making a good case, dude. You called me here, asked me to make a deal. I came here. You should be nice that I even like took time out of my day to even hear you out. Most people would just hang up on you and say, "Screw you." I know you're trying to sell something to me, but that's good practice for the people. I mean, you got to make a living. I get it. I'm willing to hear someone out. I'm willing to listen to them. And then I say, this just isn't a good deal. You want 15 grand for this Camaro and it's a piece of crap. Its its bumper is ruined. What else is wrong with it, right? If the bumper is scraped up and there's body damage, what else is wrong with it mechanically? I want an inspection. That's the thing is if and it's to be fair to that dealer's credit, they did tell me that they just got the car traded in. but they wanted $15,000 for that car, and it was a 2010. Like, dude, my car is newer, and like I was like, yeah. So you gotta, I don't know. There are some dealers that do stupid things, but you also need to do your research as a consumer, right? Looking into the cars you want to buy and seeing what a fair price is. And also, if you have your ducks in order, you're going to be less likely to be taken advantage of. So, do your due diligence. That's all I'm saying. Do your due diligence.
Everybody that was so stupid to go out and buy cars at 200% of
Yeah,
LTV,
yeah,
basically a
exactly.
victim and
hmm
taken advantage of by
When
dealerships.
they
They're going
told
to
you the
put on this
numbers,
witch hunt to go
that's your
after
fault for
dealers and
agreeing
to
to
go
it.
after bankers to basically set them up where pretty soon the way you would buy a car is the way you would basically buy a house.
Yeah.
You had to be pre-qualified. You can only get a certain loan for how much money you make. And so I knew that if that happened, majority of Americans would not be able to afford the cars
Yep.
that they're currently driving.
That's why you're seeing
Majority of Americans
repos
would be
because
driving
people
either
can't
Hyundai or
afford it.
Kia around because
hmm
if you're making $45,000 a year, you can't buy that $65,000 Mustang.
Nope.
And so I'm kind of glad that this is kind of going away. I don't know if it's going to go away all the way because, like I said, a lot of people are walking away from their auto loans. And so I
hmm
want to see how the new party is going to deal with that. But as far as what I can tell, bankers seem to be ecstatic that there's a Republican candidate in there, and they're actually
hmm
pushing forward with more lending criteria. I even talked to a bank where they're actually going to
Well,
be opening up their
and they need
subprime
to make
division
more
even
aggressive
more
deals if they
because they
want
believe
people
that the
buying
economy is
cars.
going to get better.
A car is a
Therefore, they're
big
willing to take the
purchase, not
risk when
something
it
you
comes to
take
subprime
lightly.
market. So it's
Turn my
pretty
mic down
amazing
a
how
bit.
when you go from one party to another, how some of these bankers
hmm
feel and how these banks are actually lending. This just shows that how the market is constantly changing and evolving.
Right.
This is what you need to pay attention to. Now, a lot of dealers and a lot of bankers always tend to do the exact same thing over and over again, but a lot of these bigger banks tend to set the trends when it comes to
Well, they
following
don't
what's
need to
happening in the
change things. As
political
long as there's a
atmosphere,
sucker
what's
that comes in
happening
there
with the
and buys a car
economy,
from them, they're
and
not going to
usually, like I
change
tell everybody,
anything.
banks are always trying to offset their risk. So whatever they got to do to basically
Yeah,
offset the risk as much as they possibly can so they can come out ahead, that's what
yeah,
they're
of
going to do. Whether it's lowering the
course.
amount financed, getting bigger down
hmm
payments, or just stop lending, period, which is pretty
Yeah.
much happening right now. But
That's
hopefully,
why if you want to get a loan, you really need to take banks look at that. They look at, I mean, you probably already know. They look at your employment, and with the amount of loans that have gone bad, they're getting a lot stricter too. So they're probably going to want like 10 years of income. They want to see if you're employed because, it is a risk to give 15, 20, 30 or more $1,000 to someone and pray they pay it back, right? So most of the time, I usually get cars that are 10,000 or below, and I've never had an issue getting qualified because to a bank, great. If I don't make that money back, I'm not out that much money. A lot of banks are more likely to give you a loan if you can even find a car that is reliable for $10,000 nowadays, right? But 15, 20, go up. But I personally, find a make friends make friends with a mechanic. Find a
and fingers
mechanic
crossed,
friend.
they get back to lending
You
and
know,
everybody can go out and get the cars that they really want and hopefully not get themselves absolutely in debt. Now, I want to talk about the EV
yep.
initiative. Now, so many people were crying about this
Yeah,
and screaming
jeez.
about it. Like, you can't force people to get into
hmm
EVs, which I think is true.
Yeah,
Nobody should be
agree. You
forced to
can't
buy a car
force
that they really don't want.
people to
I still
drive
think that
EVs.
we're probably about 50 years away from going about 50%
Agree.
EV.
We
We're
don't
not
have
even
we don't
close.
have
The
the
infrastructure is
infrastructure.
not
You've
even set up.
seen
If you
my
think
video.
20%
Yeah,
of
exactly. You
Americans
just said it.
went to EV right now and you lived in California, guaranteed you would have blackouts everywhere.
hmm
There's not enough infrastructure to support that many cars on
Exactly.
electricity. But now that Trump is in there, I don't think that they're actually going to do this. I think they're going to go ahead and walk it back. There's been multiple discussions about saying it
Hybrids
was the
are
wrong way to
probably the
do it.
way to
They were
go right
pushing
now.
this. So many of these companies were actually
Easing
losing
people
millions
into
of
EVs
dollars
is a
every
better
single
idea
quarter
than just
because they
throwing
have to put out
EVs at
cars that they're
everyone.
losing money on. Now
hmm
Tesla is one of the few auto manufacturers that actually makes a profit when it sells an EV. Ford, Chevy, Honda, Toyota, they're basically 10 years behind, so they're trying to
hmm
catch up. So every time they would sell like one of these
Yeah, but
Mach-E's, I think
some
they were
of
losing ten
Tesla's
to
programs are
twenty-five
so
thousand dollars
aggressive, they'll
per vehicle.
drop the
Now, what
car
happens
by like
when
twenty
most
thousand
Americans have
dollars.
maybe Ford in their retirement?
Mm-hmm.
GM, some other stock from an automotive manufacturer, every time they show a losing quarter, now it's affecting their bottom dollar, their
Yep.
retirement fund, and you can see how this
It's
kind of
also
system
affecting
just
future
basically
investors.
pulls down the
You
average
know, no one
American
wants to
even
invest in a
more.
company that's
So
not growing and
hopefully
making
they're
money.
going to push this off for a few years. They're just going to let natural innovation happen. And I think when you don't rush it and
Mm-hmm.
other manufacturers can kind of work together and start selling parts, because I don't know if most of you guys know this, every time you see a car, like even like a Nissan, the body
Mm-hmm.
may be made in Canada, Mexico, and America. The motor may be assembled in America or Mexico, and then half the parts are put together from Japan, sent over
Mm-hmm.
here. So most cars that are
It's
manufactured
cheaper.
today are not manufactured in one place. I believe
Mm-hmm.
China is one of the only few places that doesn't like to send a lot of their stuff out. They
It's all
try to keep
about the
everything in
money.
there. And because of multiple companies working together, eventually somebody's going to create a new battery, a drive system that's better than the rest, that pretty soon
Mm-hmm.
everybody's going to be buying that and putting it in their cars. Just like Getrag for transmissions, you can find them in American cars,
Mm-hmm.
Japanese cars, German cars. Same thing with a lot of the CVT trainings, even though they suck. You can find them in all different makes and models, even though they're made by 2 or 3 companies. So I think sharing this technology as
Right.
we move forward is actually going to help the EV market and help bring down prices. Also, keeping on the EV topic is the actual Chinese EVs. Now, they have tons of EVs that you can purchase for under $10,000 brand new that will give you about 150 to 200 miles of range, which I think
Not
is a
bad.
great deal because
Yeah.
Americans need cheap, affordable cars. But
Exactly.
America is so afraid to let those cars in because they have a feeling they will absolutely decimate all these automotive manufacturers that they won't be able to keep up. I'm kind of on the edge. I think they should let some of them in, and you can hit them with a tariff and charge them a few
Mm-hmm.
bucks, whatever, that's fine. I think the 200% tariffs is a little rough.
So to give people an idea of what the tariff is, because there's this big thing on tariffs. Tariffs a tax on the company, not the person. So the consumer doesn't really pay the price. So they charge these companies tariffs. So they're like, oh, if you want to sell this, you're gonna pay a tax on this, and it's gonna, then people can buy it, and then people go, well, that's hitting the consumer. Well, no, what it is creating fair competition for other companies, right? Because it really would. Imagine if you had a Chinese-made car that was $20,000 and gave you 100, 150 miles of range. Everyone would buy it. That's cheap, right? It's not expensive at all. And I think most people just want a car to get from point A to point B. You could take an electric car and just drive it to and from work, but there's still negatives on that too. I just personally, I don't think we're really there yet. We don't have, like Lucky said, and many other people, we don't have infrastructure. The technology is just not there. Usually, your home power, just plugging into a wallet and your car will not charge your car in time. I think it takes like 12 to 18 hours to charge a car on house power. And then, are you really saving money if you have a car constantly charging all the time, all day, every day, and you're not really enjoying that 100, 200-mile range? I really think right now the best thing is to just do hybrids. You can have a small little battery that will give you 75, 80 miles of range in the city, right? You could drive that in the city, and you can still put gas in your car and still drive and take nice long road trips. Until we can get better tech for electric vehicles, I think hybrids are probably our best bet. I mean, if you look at throughout history, when automotive, like when cars were first becoming a thing in like the late 18, early 1900s, they put horse heads on the cars because people were like, this is so weird. It was horse and carriage back then, so everyone was so used to it, and they gradually eased into vehicles. And I think that's kind of what needs to happen now because we don't have the tech and we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have so many things. A lot of people didn't adopt cars till like the 19 I think it was like 1915, 1920 because there was a ton of gas stations and gas was kind of the big thing, and but back then there was lead in gas, and that's a different story, but you know until we can actually get infrastructure and that really incentivizes people to buy an EV and live comfortably with it, without having that same, because there's none of those drawbacks on gas cars. If you're running low on gas, you can go find a gas station anywhere. It's not hard to find a gas station. They're everywhere. So that's just what I think. I think EVs are the future. I just think we're just not there yet. We need to ease into it. I think hybrids right now are what is a good idea. Look into a hybrid. I think hybrids are a great idea. That way you're not just dependent on electricity. You can still use electricity, right? And you can charge that battery, and then you can put some gas in your car if you want to go on a long road trip.
Rough because most Americans are not going to want to buy cheap cars. They're still going to
Hmm.
buy SUVs and trucks, which American companies make,
Yeah,
so that'll be
SUVs
fine.
are some of the
The only thing
best
I
and
would
most
do is I would
popular
force
selling
China
vehicles
to open up a
and
manufacturing plant
crossovers.
here to hire Americans to build this stuff,
Hmm.
just like Toyota does with trucks and some of
That's
these other
why a lot
things.
of dealers have
You
them.
know,
They know
build them
people are going to
here,
buy them.
use some of their technology, because I guarantee you, if that stuff starts showing up here, it's going to help American companies figure out how to make a more cheaper EV as
Hmm.
well. And like I said, now that the EV mandate is not there, don't think of it as competition. Think of it
Hmm.
as an opportunity to learn. Now, China steals a bunch of our tech. Let's might as well steal a little bit of theirs and figure out what we can do to make more affordable, cheaper EVs. On top of that, cheaper
Right.
cars. Because remember, you cannot buy a single new car in the United States for under, I believe it was like $23,000. Everything is like $23,000 and above, and that's like bottom baseline, no frills, probably crank windows and stuff like that, which is absolutely
Hmm.
insane. So all these college kids
That
coming
is
out of
pretty
school
crazy.
with massive amounts of debt can't even buy a new car. They have to buy something used, which it's even harder to get used, which you get higher interest rates. So it just kind of becomes unproductive.
Right.
That's why I think bringing affordable Chinese EVs in, as long as they maybe build them
Good
in
point.
Mexico or America, might help. And hopefully we can share manufacturing processes with them
Yeah.
to bring our own costs
Well,
down.
and
And hopefully, little by
they
little,
might
the
not
EV
even
market will
tariff it if
balance
they
out.
build it in
Now, I think in
America.
about 20 to 30 years, it will be cheaper to manufacture an EV than a regular car.
Yeah, I
It's just
agree.
like electronics. Remember when you guys paid
Yeah.
$300 for a Sony Discman? It
Yeah.
was the coolest thing. Now you can
And
go buy
then
these things for like $10 on
yeah,
Amazon. You can't buy them in stores anymore. I
they're
haven't seen them,
cheap.
but electronics have gotten
Exactly.
so cheap, it's ridiculous. So
Hmm.
I think that's the way EVs are
That's because they
going.
find a
But
way
until
to
then, we still have to figure out
manufacture it
what
more
we're going to do. And
efficiently,
I think
so
with
it costs them
Trump being
less to make
president,
it.
he's going to put those tariffs on China, which will hurt that and slow it down a little bit. But I'm hoping that they'll cause more innovation and force these other country manufacturing plants to open up here in the United States, hire more Americans, and get
That's
more
the
people
point
on
of
the
the
road
tariffs is
with
to
more
put jobs
affordable
back
cars.
in
Because at the end of
America.
the day,
Yeah,
somebody
that's the
needs to
whole
make more
point. That's
cars.
why
I
he's
don't know
tariffing it.
why every manufacturer, and I'm sure you guys have seen the news, Ford, GM, I think it was Honda, Toyota, they all said the same thing. They would rather make less cars and make more margin than
Yeah,
make more
that
cars and
makes
make
sense.
less. So if they're just going to make a bunch of high dollar, high accessory vehicles, what about the average American? The
Right.
average American cannot even afford the average new car,
Mm,
which is insane. And especially like I have some friends in construction, the average new truck is $60,000
that's
for a
crazy.
truck. For
That's
something you're going
crazy.
to throw
Hmm.
tools in and beat the hell out of, they want $60,000. And I
Yeah.
think used car truck prices are going to dip a little bit, but once gas goes down, I think you're going to see a big spike in all of these
Yeah,
trucks
if you
coming.
could cut
So
truck
it'll be
prices
great
in
that,
half,
if the
you would
Republican Party and
see
Trump actually bring gas down,
sales
but I think
skyrocket.
you're going to see car prices when it comes to trucks and
Thirty
SUVs
thousand
go
for a
up
new
because now
truck is
people can
cheap.
afford gas and they'll start buying these things even more. So it's always a balancing act when it comes to either, left or right or whoever was elected.
Hmm.
But I just wanted to share this because I thought this was kind of funny. I just thought it was interesting to see how banks basically do 180s depending on which party was picked. And so it's kind of neat to
Right.
see how this is all unfolding. Also, remember, let's keep this patriotic, not political. It's Veterans Day. If you or your friends or
Yep.
family served, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. If you know any veterans, thank them for their sacrifice because we wouldn't have the freedoms we would have without them. And like I said, it's
Seriously.
all about being
I
American.
agree.
Also, to my friends in Canada, Australia, and the UK, thank you guys so much for watching the channel. We also support you. And happy Veterans Day to your
Hmm.
veterans because we've all fought in the same wars. And I want to
Yep.
thank you guys so much again. Like I said, let's go ahead and move forward, keep things positive for 2020.
Basically closing it. But yeah, I mean, I agree with Lucky to an extent. But that was the point of the tariffs because if we didn't tariff China, then there would really be no reason for anyone to go buy an American vehicle if you can just go buy a Chinese vehicle in America for really cheap, right? Because Trump makes a point when he says, look, China has cheap labor and they're utilizing it and they're exploiting it. And it's true, they are. They can manufacture and build things for very cheap and then sell them across different countries for a huge profit. and that's the majority of the Chinese economy. They do that consistently. So the point that Trump's trying to make is like, look, if China does this, it could really ruin the American automotive market. So he wants to tariff that company to kind of incent, well, Chinese manufacturers, right? He's to incentivize people to buy American, to incentivize companies to bring jobs to America, which we do need. We need, we need to make things. We need to produce things again. That's the problem. We don't produce anything, like legitimately don't make anything. Yet we're spending all this money like we produce things. But that, again, that's a conversation for a different time. I just thought it would be fun to kind of react to this. So, peace.